Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. I have a very special guest. His name is Judge Clifton Graves. And I've been talking with this man for a number of years when I worked at the New Haven Register as an editor and columnist. And I'm very excited that he's here because I wanted to talk to him about probate court. He is a probate court judge, though he's previously been an attorney with in criminal cases and so forth and so on. We're talking today about domestic violence and crime, but we're going to have Judge Graves back on the show in the coming weeks because I really want to talk about probate court. It is not something that is, talked about a lot in the Black community, and many times when family members die or family members are incarcerated or in a hospital or whatever, we don't know what to do, and that's where Judge Graves comes in. Anyway, let's get right to it. I'm James Walker. He is Judge Clifton Graves, and let's hear what he has to say. Why don't we start out talking about crime? Now, I know you're a
Yes,
probate
sir.
judge, so you're not sitting in criminal court, but I'm sure you're familiar with the
No.
proceedings and so forth. And I think, like a
Yes,
lot
sir.
of people, I am confused as to why we continue to have hardened criminals out on the street who have been convicted of violent crimes, sometimes more than once. Can you explain to me why
Yeah.
this is happening?
Well, here's the thing. Well, first of all, let me just say how honored and privileged and humbled I am that you asked me to be a part of this discussion. Um, I, I'm a probate judge now, but I've of course been practicing law for over 30 years and work with NAACP among other community organizations and dealing with issues related to crime, criminal justice, injustices in the criminal justice system, the mass incarceration issue, all that over the years. And but also as an African American, living in growing up and living in and being part of the Black community my entire life, it disturbs me, it disheartens me, it frustrates me, and angers me when I see and hear about the crime, any type of crime taking place in our community. So the balance, so our struggle has been, my struggle has been, Brother Walker, is just, to answer your question, is this. On the one hand, we all acknowledge, most of us will acknowledge the fact that there are injustices and inequities in the criminal justice system, which end up oftentimes wrongfully convicting young men and women of color. We know that,
Yes.
and compared to other communities, we know that, acknowledge that, and so part of our struggle is to address and correct those inequities. On the other hand, we have to acknowledge the fact that there are just disproportionate, and sadly, a disproportionate number of crimes that are committed by people of color on people of color and in our communities. And so often, and to your point, many times, sadly, or more than that, well, I don't say many times, but certainly the significant amount of this crime is committed by men and women who've been convicted of crimes, served time, and are released and back into the community more often than not, and end up committing. The recidivism rates are sadly higher than they need to be, and usually committed by these folks who've been let out for one reason or another. So to answer your question, part of the problem has been in Connecticut. Part of the challenge and part of the problem has been there was an acknowledgement by all the state officials and quite frankly, you should know this, by members of both political parties, Republicans and Democrats, that our prisons were overcrowded. We were spending too much money keeping folk incarcerated who didn't need to be.
Who didn't
Some
need to
some
be.
yes needed to be for sure, needed to be absolutely no that was across the board. No matter what race, nationality, ethnicity, what community you came from, there are people everyone acknowledged who need to be, sadly, need to be incarcerated and pay for the crimes that they committed. No question about it. But there are others who actually for the time they were there needed to be there, but perhaps had shown some qualities or remorse or had developed a skill set, went back to school, got a GED, high school diploma, some even college degrees while they were incarcerated, and made it clear and was clear to the officials that these are the folks you want to who deserve a second chance, if you will,
Right.
to come back home, be discharged, be released, reconnect with their families, and start over again. And there have been uh, um, happily to say, there have been many folks who've been discharged, men and women of all races, who've been discharged from Connecticut's institutions, who have done just that. Who've come back home and turned their lives around,
Right.
have done well, are doing well,
I
have
know
gotten
some of
jobs,
them.
and so yeah, but they yeah, and you know something. As you know, when we first met, I was in charge of the New Haven reentry program,
Hmm.
one of the first in the state, and that was our role, our job, our task, our challenge was to meet folks where they were as soon as they were discharged from the Connecticut's penal institutions, and try to assist them with jobs, with education, with housing, mental health counseling, whatever it might be, substance abuse counseling, to get them on the right path or keep them on the right paths. But even with that, they could come back to your point. Even all that program and that similar program, in fact, that program is still ongoing here in New Haven. There are comparable programs in Hartford and in Bridgeport and Waterbury trying to address that very issue. But still, as we know in life, there's still far too many folks falling through those cracks who come back home, who either front and tell it to everybody that I'm good, I'm ready for the second chance, or sincerely want to do that, but fall prey to the temptations of the community, the neighborhoods that they came from, get lured back into the lifestyle that got them in trouble in the first place, and end up reconnecting with the criminal element, and take advantage of and exploit that, and end up committing these crimes again. So it's a conundrum of sorts. It's a challenge for us. It's not to say that the effort to 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 de to suddenly empty out the prisons to those who warrant it. Those efforts are still necessary for sure, and but at the same time, what we have to do is figure out, well, how can we address this issue of ongoing criminal behavior and violence in our communities. And here's the thing: just as you know, just you pick up, you're a journalist. You can't pick up the paper or look at the news or social
No, you
media
can't.
any day in New Haven, Hartford, Bridgeport, and Waterbury, and somebody else got shot. Somebody
Somebody.
every day,
I have to be
and
frank.
somebody get shot.
When and
Yeah,
it's a sad thing to say, but when I heard about the Bristol
yes,
shooting, the Bristol cop shooting, the first
yes,
thing that came to my mind was,
yes.
please don't let these men be black. Please don't let them
But
be
you know
black.
what? You know what? But and it's funny. And I got to tell you, great man thinking like. I got to tell you, we've been so socialized and conditioned, and as black men over 40, that when every time of that magnitude happens, that's the first thought that comes in our mind,
First, the
and
first thought.
that was a similar thought that came in our mind too. First thought, like, please, Lord, please don't let it be somebody black.
Somebody.
But as horrific as that was, yeah, that's what you're hoping that it won't be. But and you're right, and I think that. But here's the other thing that was troubling, and certainly for me and for you and I, who are concerned about these issues in our community, is that there are too many guns in the hands of young people,
Too many.
teenagers who have no idea what to
Teenagers.
do with it. Too many guns to teenagers who have no idea. First of all, they shouldn't have a gun, and then they don't know what to do with a gun, and they haven't been trained how to use a gun, so they just shoot, and which is why more often than not, people that they intend to get shot, you get shot, but usually somebody else who's not the intended victim gets shot because for that very reason. And but the gun, but the proliferation of guns in our community still is something that should trouble and concern all of us. And I think and the fact that these young men, more often than not, some women, but certainly young men, just don't have the training or the guidance, I guess, not the training, the guidance to figure out how to divert that energy. Now, to our credit, I mean to their credit, not our credit, to I guess to our community's credit, and I would say this about New Haven, you know this. I think there's similar efforts in Bridgeport, Waterbury, and Hartford, but I do know in New Haven, there's several initiatives. There's a program called Hang Time, run by Charles Grady, who's a former FBI agent. In fact, no, he's an FBI agent. He works for the FBI and former New Haven police officer and actor, quite frank, actor and on the stage and screen, who's from this. His father was a police officer too, and he decided that he was part of what he would do, and is to give back to the community. He would bring in men and women formerly incarcerated, put them get together like I think once or twice a month on a regular basis. He brings people in like you, like me, like firefighters, police officers, carpenters, barbers, to talk to them and give them guidance and direction, hear them out, give them a chance to speak, to give them guidance and direction and monitor and follow them to make sure they get housing and get jobs and stay on the right path. That's one program. That's just one program. Hang Time. There's another program run by this man named Sean Reeves. Sean Reeves, former gang right here in New Haven, former gang banger himself, went to jail, served time for being a gang banger when he was young. Got did his bid, James, came back out. His son, his little teenage son, victim of gun violence, broke his heart. But and that beyond him, with the time that he served, turned his life around. So now what he does, using his experience and experience the tragedy he had experienced in losing his son, he had part of it. He has a program called Sports Academy where he takes young boys after school, 8, 9, starts early, brings them in after school, does computer training, tutoring, teaches them how to play chess, Brother Walker. He like others have done this around the country. You chess as a way to channel energy, to how to think things through, strategize on how to address problems in life. And what his experience has shown, as others who've done this, is that if you teach them and train them in that direction, they can figure stuff out as opposed to resorting to violence. So that program. Then of course you have the street workers that have been working out of the city of New
Mhm.
Haven. And there's another component called by Leonard Jihad, former parole and probation officer, former police officer himself, parole probation officer, who runs that program. And these are mostly men and women, former gangbangers themselves, in and out of prison themselves, who back home now, who figure they can relate and connect with these young people. So all these efforts, and that's what's even more troubling. So you have all these efforts right going on right now as we speak right now. Those three efforts are going on, among other things. And I'm sorry, one more. Project More has a program where over on Joe Grand Avenue, been around 40 years, which addresses men and women, formerly incarcerated men and women who come
Mhm.
out, and they help and guide them and get them direction. But the city of New Haven has their reentry program I used to run. Is connected with Project More now, and actually has an office right there on Project More's headquarters, where men and women who, once they get out of prison, they're dropped off there. Before heretofore, they used to be dropped off on the street on Whaley
On the
Avenue,
street corner, right?
and had 5 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, exactly. Just sit there and wait till somebody open up at 9 o'clock, but they can go knock on the door to get for a job or for a meal or whatever. Now they're dropped off at Project More, and then they can get a meal. They can get guidance and direction right away. So that's a change for the better.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll get back to the conversation in a minute. But I just want to take time to remind folks that my book, Dead Windows, is available through Amazon. You can buy the ebook, the paperback, and or the hardcover. I think it's a good read. I think you'll enjoy reading it. Also, if you like our content here, hit that subscribe button, like and share our videos. We will surely appreciate it and help us grow. Okay, let's get back to the conversation.
Okay.
Project Longevity. What you think it's a good thing? Is it working?
Well, here's the thing. I honestly, I think there are mixed reviews on it. I know when it first started, I had a chance to work with both at least New Haven directors. There was a Reverend pastor whose name escapes me. I can't remember his name. Who was
Yeah,
the first director, and then um, Stacy.
I know
I
Stacey.
think
I
Stacy.
can't think of Stacey's
You know,
last
Stacey.
name, and I
Yeah, but we know Stacy, right? Stacey.
right.
Now, Stacy, I think did a good job. Stacy again was a New Haven New Haven police officer, very connected in the community. People knew him, respected him, and he was a good choice, I thought, to run the New Haven project. There was I think a Hartford office as well as a statewide coordinator. I got a chance to interact with them as well when I worked for the city, and I think the frustration um, they felt was they didn't get Project Longevity, that is, didn't get enough support. And again, understand this: Project Longevity was a federal program, federal and state. There were federal and state monies that had been allocated or set aside to for these programs. And again, similarly to what Hang Time, well, no, actually, I take it back. Project Longevity's interest was and focus was primarily on getting
Gang violence.
interacting with these
Right.
gang violence to deal with these young men, catch them and early enough. And here's the thing, and what they, so to answer your question, I thought it was somewhat effective. I got it. They'd have these sessions. I don't know if you ever had a chance to attend one, James, but they'd have these. You did. So so you know what I mean. So they had these sessions, and all these folks are in the audience, and they bring these young men in, and Stacy would kind of like, it was like scared straight almost. At least that was kind of what the focus was. Except these kids weren't scared. I mean, they just got,
But
because
to be fair, they ran out of money, because I do know, and I can't think of the minister's name, the one of the first directors who was a minister, and I think he worked at Yale. If I'm not mistaken, he also worked at Yale, but they weren't getting paychecks. I know that for a period of time they went weeks without a paycheck. So again, it seemed to me that it was one of these programs that's announced, we're going to give you X amount of dollars, 60% of it goes to salaries. They got 40% of it left. They help 2 or 3 people, and then the program collapses. And that to me is always a problem. But one other thing I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Do you think, and I don't know if I'm being paranoid here, but do you think that maybe some of these people are being let out of jail so early, or are not, do not have long sentences because it's black on black crime? In other words, do you think that they would have gotten that same sentence if they had a shot, or whatever, a white person? It just seems to me that every time we read, every time we turn on the news, it's not just that this person committed this crime. It's that this person has a long history of violent crime, assault, or whatever. So how are these people continuing to get back out of the street? Let's face it, just like you said, there are people who deserve a second chance, but there are people who've made it very clear that they could care less about a second chance. So it's a little frustrating to hear the anchor person or the reporter say, he's been arrested, 10 times. We've got somebody in New Haven, I remember he was arrested 96 times or something like that. I couldn't believe it. Heady stuff. But 90, it was unbelievable the amount of time that he had been arrested. And so it just seems to me that we've got to do something as a community to stop this violence, because we have grandmothers who are cooking, getting shot at, while they're cooking Sunday dinner. So something has to be.
Well, I listen. I'm not. Just 2 quick things. Yeah, on the project quickly. The Project Longevity issue. I agree. I don't think there never was a committed, a strong federal or state commitment to fund the program and to make it successful. I think it had a good motive and a good purpose and mission, and I think it was somewhat successful. But I don't think there was the backing that it needed to make it effective. Everybody's staffs were small. I know right here in New Haven, Stacy only had like 1 person helping him.
Yeah, they had nobody helping.
Help. And so I think it may be similar in Hartford and Bridgeport. But that being said, so I think that's something we need to look at in terms of going forward. It looks good on paper, but is there a real commitment to make change? So now going to the other point. Now here's the thing. We all would agree. I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree. There are some serious shortcomings and failings within the criminal justice system. To be sure, on most of the prosecutors and judges in Superior Court are still mostly white men. Still, there are more women and more persons of color now than ever in our history, but still dominated by Caucasian males. So more often than not, in black on black in the criminal court, the victims, as I said earlier, are African American people of color, as well as the perpetrators. So, and while their sentences, depending on what nature of the crime might be, the prosecutors will put harsh sentences on these men and women, but for the most part, but certainly you're right. I am certain there are discrepancies, and if the victim is depending on the race of the victim, I'm sure in terms of what sentencing they will propose, and this be meted out and handed down by the judge. So I'm sure that still exists. And but the other side of it is that there was an acknowledgement, and I think at the top level that we've had these inequities and failings in our criminal justice system, and that there's sociologists and psychologists and criminologists who say, well, these extra long sentencing for this particular crime doesn't really do any good. We're putting all this money out. Let's give this person another chance. But the problem is, again, as we said earlier, some people are deserving of the second or third, even the third chance, but there are others who are not, sadly, and who won't take advantage of it, who milk the system. I mean, we listen. There are people throughout society. We know this of all races, of all classes, who take advantage, who milk the society,
Hmm.
who take advantage of, to take advantage of the society. Whether it's billion dollar, I mean, billionaires who milk the tax system and don't pay a dime in taxes.
Right.
They're breaking the law, but well, they have lawyers who help them, finesse it and get around it. And so, and that's on the one level. On the other hand, you have the petty criminals, the ones that we deal with in our community more often than not. When I say petty, but folks who perpetrate and take advantage of their environment, who figure more often than not that they get caught more, but sometimes they don't, and they know that, and they know that the system is really not that apt to catch them, because it's black on black crime, and so there's this continuum and this culture of violence that exists in our community, and disrespect really comes down to disrespect first of all for yourself, disrespect for your community, for your families, people who look like you, and I think there's something that so it's a deeper problem and I think the crime is just the tip of the iceberg of the criminal behavior. There's a deeper societal problem, institutional problem, cultural problem that we have to address as far as the lack of respect for one another that ends up resulting in this criminal behavior and criminal activity and that happens in our community. Listen, when these kids, I mean, listen, I was on my way to church yesterday morning, Brother Walker, and there was coming down Gulf Street in New Haven, and there's yellow tape all on Sherman Avenue, and I'm saying this is Sunday morning,
Money.
okay, and Sunday morning, yesterday morning, Sunday morning, and there are police cars all over because somebody, them teenagers, got into a shootout, Sunday morning, uh, teenagers shoot at each other
Mhm.
in cars on Sunday morning. So it's like, what? I mean, just the lack of respect again, and I don't know, and it troubles me like it troubles you, that because I think I told you this. So I teach African American history, man. I have young people in my class, eight, and so I tell, and these are young people who brothers, sisters, family members, cousins, people they went to school with, grew up with, are the ones out here doing this stuff.
Mhm.
They know it. We talk about it, and they say, and I can see the angst and frustration on their faces because they know folk who've been shot, folks who've been killed, folks who've been incarcerated, folks who out there right now gang banging, and here they are trying to turn their lives around, get an education, and do something positive. But you can see you sense and they talk about it, the frustration they feel, and but also the fear they feel,
I
the
go and say
apprehension
also
they
the
feel
fear, I'm
because
sure. I mean, no matter
yeah,
what,
because
yellow tape has become almost like an accessory in the
yeah,
black community. Everywhere you go, there's this yellow tape. Police, I mean, our
yellow tape.
kids are growing up seeing all they're seeing are police, detectives, yellow tape,
Yeah,
blood on the
yeah,
ground. Everybody knows somebody that's been shot and killed. It's
sure,
just insanity. It really is.
yeah,
And speaking of that, let's move
sure,
on to domestic violence
okay,
because suddenly we have
yes,
all
sir,
of these and I'm just going to say men, even though I know there are
sure,
plenty of women out here also um, who
yes, sir,
um, who also are
victim,
perpetrators. But we have, and it just seems to me these men are just losing their minds. They're killing their women
yeah,
and mothers of the children right in front of the children. I mean, there.
yes.
I just don't get this. What can we do about that? What do you think is the yeah? Because this has really is escalating, not de-escalating. It's escalating. What do you think we can do?
Yeah, Well, here's the thing. I do think we have to, even though it's sad. You're right. It's sad and it's tragic because it happens every day. And what's even more ironic for us is, if not hypocritical, Connecticut is probably in the forefront of addressing mental health issues and domestic violence issues,
Hmm.
perhaps than many other states. But even with that, we see, as you talk about in your book, your own experiences, we see every day this stuff happening. This violence being perpetrated against women, usually by men, but also it happens, and the inverse happens as
Hmm.
well. But more often than not, the majority of cases involve men battering women or threatening women, or violence perpetrating violence upon women, and the children witness this. Sometimes the children are victims too. Well, they are victims anyway, no matter how it is. By them witnessing it, they
They're
become
victims,
victims
yes.
psychologically. Yeah, they're victims of domestic violence too, and because we have no idea until later the psychological impact witnessing this. I think I told you I had a case getting in probate court where the woman was shot and killed by her ex-boyfriend in front of her children, and the children. So now these children are young. So we have no idea. We talked about this in cases with our social workers and the therapists, that we had to monitor these children probably the rest of their lives because we have no idea then what this has done to their psyche.
Well, I can
Um
tell you that it has
and to
destroyed their
Yeah.
psyche to see their mother shot
Oh,
and killed.
sure.
But it's gotta just be. I mean, all I saw was my mother getting beat. There's a big difference between getting
Sure.
beat and actually having your mother murdered in front of you. I
Yeah,
mean, that is just
absolutely.
it's just outrageous. And I
It is
don't know,
outrageous. So
and it's getting worse. As I said, it's getting worse.
it is getting worse. So I think so. Honestly, I don't. Sadly, I don't have the answer, but I do know. But what I'm hopeful though is that by having discussions like this, you writing a book about it, and the fact that Connecticut again as is in the forefront, and even being in the forefront, we see how terrible and horrific the problem remains right here in Connecticut. But at least there's hope that by continuing to educate, enlighten, and even have, whether it's entertainers or athletes speaking out against domestic violence, and hopefully that will help these men more often than not get the help they need. But the problem is identifying it, and more often than not, the women who are the victims won't say anything to anybody, won't go get the help, won't finger anybody, won't
I
call the
know.
police because
I
they're
know.
scared. They're afraid, or they're either afraid of losing the man, or afraid of getting beat by the man, or to being retaliated against. And so we have this culture of fear among women generally. But I think some of that is being alleviated and addressed, but the more women are being able to become educated on this, and enlightened about the help that's out there, and the fact that Connecticut does have domestic violence shelters for women they can go to that remain remain
Anonymous.
like they in the Women's Protection Program, and now the people they can't disclose it. So we've had situations in court where where an issue involving custody, or whatever it might be, and the husband or the father will come and say, well, that I want to know where they are, because and we said, no, you can't, we can't let you know where they are. Or the lawyers will ask on behalf of the father, when the mother's in domestic violence home, we need to know. And he said, no, no, the law is very clear. We not disclose the location where that mother might be for fear of harm being brought to her, or her children, by this guy who's got issues. And so there are laws in place, fortunately, here in Connecticut, that protect women if they seek shelter in a domestic violence environment. There are places, and there are entities in place. DCF is very good, and other entities in the state are being more sensitized to domestic violence issues. But we still have a long ways to go, a long ways to go to address that. But a lot of it has to deal with culture and male ego, and the failure or the lack of failure, I guess it will be, of men who have help. I mean, who need help, seeking the help, and further, the failure of family members or friends of the person perpetuating the violence, calling them out, and guiding him or directing him or leading him to get the help that he needs, because the help is here.
The
Connecticut
help,
has
the
the help.
help is here,
We
and
just
I
need
and I
to
know
see
the
that.
help is
Then,
here.
yeah,
And
Yeah, help is here.
you're right. We need friends, relatives, male friends and relatives to call them out and
Sure.
let them know this is not the right thing to do. But I'm not sure if that would work. I mean, because I am pretty sure that
Mm,
some of these guys, try to calm these guys who are, who are beating their women and so forth. I'm sure they're trying to calm them down. But the problem is the anger, and they
yes.
men don't want to control their anger in that moment. They don't want to control their anger. They would
Right.
rather beat, get the anger out that way. And of course,
Sure.
that just leads to you. Well, we already know what that leads to. Well, sir, we
Yeah.
are actually out of
Yes,
time.
sir.
we
I was
are.
okay. Well,
But is there
okay. But
anything that I haven't asked you that you wanna say something about?
well, first of all, I commend you and thank you again for tackling this issue of domestic violence in your own book, based on your own experiences. You should be applauded for that and commended, and hope that you continue to go around and share your experiences
I
to
will.
educate, enlighten, and I know you will. So I thank you for that. As far as issue that listen, the things we talked about are serious issues, as you know, and we just barely scratched the surface
Barely.
in our discussion today. But the hope will be that folks like us and others, and there are people out there who I think will feel the same way as we do about us as a community addressing these issues. We had to come together and figure out and strategize on ways we can address this the issue of domestic violence, certainly in our community, and as a subset of that, just well, as a large issue, crime generally, and especially crime being perpetuated by these young people on the one hand. And the second piece, of course, these men and women who come back out of incarceration, who need help and guidance and direction, so they won't fall prey to the wiles and temptations of the street. But that's a big job for us, a
Yeah.
big job for us. But we have to do it. We have to figure out a way to figure to come to grips with this. But I hope that we'll continue some discussion on this, Milwaukee, and I'm looking forward to the next segment on probate court or whatever we decide to talk about. That's fine. But I wish you
Yes.
well. Thank you, and wish our community the best going forward in battling these issues and coming up with strategies to because listen, I think it was someone who said, "No one will save us from us or for us, but us."
You've been listening to Real Talk, Real People. If you would like to be on the show, if you have an idea for the show, give us a call at 203-605-1859 or drop us an email at realtalkrealpeoplect@gmail.com. You folks have a good week, and we'll talk again next week.